Good evening, Clearly Essential team, and welcome to our monthly educational webinar. We love to focus a lot on education on our team. So we have continuing education classes available on a monthly basis. We've been doing it all this year on the first Thursday of the month, and that will be changing in the new year in 2018. I will keep you all posted. But we will need to make some changes to that just because we have a lot of other classes live that are scheduled on Thursdays already. So we'll be discontinuing it always being on the first Thursday, but we're still going to bring you lots of great continuing education. Tonight's topic is all about our gut health. And I am here with Diane Carroll, and she asked me if I would start out by just sharing a little bit of my own journey with my gut health. So a couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago, it actually started when I was going through a stressful season of moving out of my home and into an RV. And I began having some bouts of shingles outbreaks, which I'd never had before. And I was able to take care of that naturally. I used a lot of oils and supplements and herbs and rest and good nutrition. And it was a pretty short-lived bout of that, which I was very thankful for. And I kind of thought that was the end of it. I thought, well, I'm stressed and my immune system is just overtaxed because of stress. It's very common with shingles. And I just kind of moved on with my life. We moved into an RV and we started traveling. Well, then somewhere in our RV travels, I picked up a parasite, and I didn't know at first what was going on, but I started feeling badly and having digestive issues and feeling lethargic and tired a lot. So I started to do some research into what might be going on with me, with my gut, and it continued to just grow worse over the next several months. And I did a 30-day cleanse with dōTERRA's products. I cut my diet down to really clean eating, and I still wasn't getting the amount of relief I expected. I would get relief for a little bit, and then it would come back. So I finally did have some testing done, found out I had a parasite. I was also developing an intolerance to gluten and a few other grains and other foods that I found out through some blood testing. And really the analysis was that I had leaky gut and also candida, so along with the parasite. So I began doing the 30-day cleanse, and I did that actually a few times in a row. And in that 1-year period, I did the cleanse 5 times. And I was able to get to a point where I was feeling much, much better. I did cut a lot of foods out of my diet for that time period. I tried adding some of that back in. Some of it was fine. Gluten was not. I was never able to add gluten back into my diet. So I've just learned to live without it. And the ironic part about that is I grew up on a wheat farm. My dad was a wheat farmer. So I grew up around it. But that meant I also grew up around a lot of pesticides and other things as well. So I'm sure that there were many facets involved with that, that just being one of them, that I was exposed to a parasite, and it just kind of had a chain reaction. And I really thought the shingles was probably not even related at the time. But looking back, I think that was just the beginning of my immune system being compromised, because the rest of my family was with me everywhere I went and traveled everywhere I did. And none of them had any issues with parasites. So who knows? That's just something I'll never really know. However, I do know just with a couple of other supplements that dōTERRA doesn't have, and things like bone broth to really support gut health, and vitamin D to help with the lining of my intestine, just a lot of different things that I did, knowing what leaky gut comes from and what some of the treatments recommended, which a lot of it is food-based. And Diane's going to talk a lot about that. So I did make some changes nutritionally, and I also was very faithful to my regimen of dōTERRA oils and supplements internally, and then topically with oils as well. And I feel much, much better now. It's been about a year since I've really had any digestive issues. If I do eat gluten accidentally, I still will have some recurrence, but I will take Terrazyme as soon as I feel it in my gut that something's not settling right. I will take a couple extra Terrazyme, and it passes within 15 to 20 minutes, where it used to be 6 to 12 hours of complete misery before I realized I could take Terrazyme after the fact, as well as taking it preventively to help me digest foods more easily beforehand. So that is a little bit of my journey, just as a testimonial. If you or someone you know is struggling with digestive health and you don't know the source, I would definitely encourage some testing, blood testing, stool testing, both if necessary, if you feel warranted. And I did work with a natural doctor, a chiropractor actually, and also a conventional medicine doctor who specializes in GI health, because I kind of wanted both of their perspectives to see what was going on, and I wanted to get well-rounded testing. And then once I knew what was going on, I went 100% the natural route as far as figuring out how to get my body supported for good GI health again. I did not decide to do any of the conventional medicine, the options that were offered to me. I knew that through diet and good supplementation and oils, I could get my health back on track, and was able to do that. So I just offer that as an encouragement for anyone out there listening and wanting to know if that's possible. And Diane Carroll is going to take over and share with you some of what she has learned. I'll let her share where she was able to delve into this information a little bit more. And she'll flesh out a lot of the different ways that we can love our guts and be much more comfortable and much healthier as well, because so much of what goes on in our bodies starts in our gut. Our immune system, most of our immune system is housed in our gut, about 75-80% from what I've read. And so a lot of what goes on in our health starts right there in our gut. So Diane, I'll let you introduce yourself and your topic, if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. That is a great testimony, and I've I'd heard bits and pieces of it, but I'd not heard the whole thing, and I found myself flashing back to different slides that I'll be sharing. So I'm so grateful that you have this personal experience to bring to the information that I'm going to share tonight. So are we ready then to get started?
Sure, yeah. I'll go ahead and stop our video so we can see all of the fantastic information that you have for us on the slides. And I'm going to mute myself for now. And then at the end, anyone, if we have some time, if you have questions, you can unmute yourself at that point, or you can just go ahead and use the chat feature throughout if you want to ask any questions that we can help answer at the end, but you want to ask them while you're thinking of them. Feel free to just type it over in the chat box if you're here live with us on Zoom, and we can address those at the end. So take it away, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. So, okay, my name is Diane Carroll, and I've been a wellness advocate with dōTERRA now for about 3.5 years. And I've been building my business part-time for the last 3 years or so. And this particular topic, like I mentioned in my initial presentation on the inflammatory response, is really near and dear to my heart. My mom has suffered really all of my life, and more than 2/3 of hers, with an autoimmune disease, and subsequently developed additional autoimmune diseases since that time. So my life experience has been watching the devastating effects it has had on her health. And, you know, there was a time when allopathic medicine was all I knew. And while I watched her health continue to decline, on some level, it just didn't seem right that there was nothing else that could be done except to take a gallon Ziploc bag full of pills every day. And I'm not exaggerating. When she lived in Washington State and would plan a visit out here, she would send many of her medications ahead of time through the mail so she wouldn't have to travel with them on the airplane. So it wasn't until someone introduced me to dōTERRA that I began to become more interested in natural forms of health. I began studying more about it, not only on my own, but also through continuing education. And this is where I probably should include some disclosure information. I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist or a medical practitioner. I am, however, a registered nurse, which allows me access to some fantastic continuing education. And I'm excited to share with you tonight some of what I learned from Dr. Ginger Shermer. I attended her seminar recently, and she has over 30 years of experience in her field. And she travels all over the country teaching healthcare providers about the latest research in the gut microbiome, diet, and disease. And because of her and others like her, traditional medical practitioners are starting to understand more of what drives inflammation and autoimmunity, and how we can make changes through our diet and other lifestyle choices. My goal is that this information will empower those listening to start implementing the recommendations I'll share here as it applies to your own life, and maybe even dig a little deeper on this topic and discover how you can help your gut to heal like so many others have. Again, because of the nature of the topic, I'll be using some disease names and other medical terms as necessary to impart the information in a way that makes sense. And then toward the last third of the class or so, I'll be sure to change my vocabulary to maintain compliance when we discuss how dōTERRA can assist us in supporting our gut and immune function. So feel free to screenshot as needed and take notes. I do have a list of resources. If you'd like a copy of those, just comment somewhere and I'll be sure to get one to you. So we're going to move pretty quickly, so let's get started. Leaky gut syndrome is almost always associated with autoimmune disease. In fact, reversing symptoms of autoimmune disease depends on healing the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. Any other treatment is just symptom suppression. This quote by Dr. Jill Carnahan really summarizes what it is we're going to cover tonight. She is a board-certified family practitioner and internist, as well as a certified functional medicine consultant. And you can find her on the internet if you'd like more information about her. Okay, so key points for tonight. We're going to look at 5 Ds tonight. We'll define dysbiosis and how it relates to the gut's barriers, microbiota or flora, and leaky gut. We'll look at some diseases associated with leaky gut. We'll look at the role vitamin D plays in immunity. And then my favorite part, we'll look at some ways dōTERRA can help us to love our guts. I want to quickly define these terms before we look more closely at leaky gut because they will come up and I don't want to assume everyone knows what they are. So microbiota is what a lot of people refer to as the gut flora. And it's the population of microbial species that live on or in the human body. So that could be bacteria, viruses, parasites, funguses, and things of that nature. We have 10 to 100 trillion microbial cells found all over our body. And predominantly, they are in our gut. Now, the microbiome means community of microbes, sort of like a rainforest. So micro means small, biome means a habitat of living things. The microbiota and all of its genetic material make up the microbiome. So the rainforest is a habitat for all of the different species that live within it. And they have this relationship that is dependent on one another, where each one benefits from the other. So the microbiota live and thrive in our system as their hosts. And from them, we get benefits, such as immunity, nutrient absorption, and gene translocation. And then at the bottom there, dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is an imbalance of the gut microbial community. And this imbalance, it can be both quantitative and qualitative changes. So you can have a change in the number of bacteria, you can have a change in their composition or in their activity or function, or in the distribution of them. All right, so we're going to go through some fun facts really quick. Microorganisms live everywhere in the human body, like we mentioned. In any person, there are at least 10 times as many bacterial cells as human cells. More than 1,000 species of bacteria live in and on us, and at least 300 of those species can be found just in a person's mouth. Now, the metagenome, which is all of the genetic material in our body, contains 10 times more microbial genes than human genes. Some of this bacteria helps to protect us from other pathogens. And in some cases, they will literally take up space so that the harmful bacteria cannot set up residence. Some bacteria help us absorb nutrients, and others will serve as an indication of the status of our health. Now, when there are changes in a person's person's microbiome, those have been associated with a number of diseases and conditions, such as Crohn's disease, bacterial vaginosis, obesity. And the other fun fact is the gut microbiome is determined to be in a state of eubiosis, which is balance, or dysbiosis, that imbalance, by the age of 3. And the changes that occur are relative to the diet. Okay, so let's take a look at, when we talk about leaky gut, we're talking really about the small intestine. And within the small intestine, we have what is called an intestinal barrier. It is a highly insulated, built-in mechanism designed to prevent leaks. This physical barrier is made up of the intestinal epithelium. That's the lining of the small intestine. It's made up of a single layer of epithelial cells. And if you notice here, the area that it covers is roughly 4,300 square feet. So that's a lot of coverage. Also, there is a mucus lining, and of course, our gut microbial resonance. Then, in addition to the physical barrier, you have a biochemical barrier and an immunological barrier, which I won't get into, but as you can see, it is a very complex system. Now, problems occur when these cells, proteins, and microbes that make up the barrier become dysregulated or out of balance. Okay, so what is leaky gut? The term leaky gut syndrome is used to describe the condition of hyperpermeable intestines. Okay, so that means the intestinal lining has become more porous, with more holes developing that are larger in size. And the screening out process then is no longer functioning properly. So what are some causes of leaky gut? Well, we've got diet, of course, medications, including acid blockers and antibiotics, infections such as SIBO, E. coli, Shigella. We'll go over SIBO in a little bit. Stress, hormone imbalances, autoimmune conditions, we're going to talk a little bit about those, industrial food processing, as well as environmental factors, such as the pesticides, solvents, cigarette smoke, things of that nature. What I think is important to note here, as you can see in the picture that Dr. Axe has provided for us, that it is often the leaky gut that drives inflammation. That leads to food intolerances, which can then turn on immune issues and lead to autoimmune disease. Okay, so here's another picture from Dr. Axe depicting the leaky gut. So you have the lining, you see the lining there of your small intestine lined with the epithelial cells that are very tight. And between some of them are proteins that are called tight junctions that are, again, very tight and responsible for keeping toxins and otherwise harmful substances out of the bloodstream. Now, if something creates a disruption, such as a gut bacterial change, remember that dysbiosis or imbalance, that can cause the permeability to be affected. So that is one variable. And then the junctions don't remain tight. They begin to open, and they're not supposed to do that. The opening then allows all of these substances to pass through and can trigger a serious reaction. Common findings are food sensitivities. This increased permeability where substances are passing through creates an inflammatory state. This triggers like an IgG and an IgA response. Okay, not a true allergy response, that's IgE, but the food sensitivity response triggers that response to the immune system where the body is reacting to these proteins. This in turn drives systemic inflammation, which then could in turn turn on autoimmunity and lead to a progression of autoimmune disease. This pathway has been detected, which is why leaky gut is now being studied. Now, the other variable you see there is a zonulin disruption. Well, what is that? Zonulin is a protein that is the only known physiological regulator of the tight junctions of the lining of the small intestines. It is responsible for keeping those tight junctions tight. Increased zonulin leads to dysfunction and dysregulation of the tight junctions. And gluten has been identified as a strong disruptor of zonulin. But people will have a good response with a gluten-free diet if this is the problem. People on a gluten-free diet have healed their leaky gut. You see, gluten causes the dysregulation of the zonulin, which increases the permeability. So if you take away the offending compound, you have regulated zonulin, thus taking away the leaky gut. So why didn't our ancestors have all these problems with gluten? Well, the reason why gluten today is such a problem is because we have modern wheat. Our wheat today is 80% gluten because of how it's been changed by the food industry. It didn't used to be that high. So this high amount of gluten is increasing sensitivities, which is causing the dysregulation, which is causing the increased permeability. So gluten is the first protein that is looked at when trying to correct leaky gut. And this is also why people with autoimmune disease feel so much better with a gluten-free diet. Casein is typically the next protein that is looked at. You know, some people have food sensitivity tests done that'll show 20 to 30 food sensitivities. These sensitivities are often a result of leaky gut. And most of the time, if you remove the gluten and allow the gut to heal, then you can reintroduce those items that were driving that IgG and IgA response, and they will no longer trigger that response. All right, so I want to talk a minute about SIBO because it has a significant correlation between leaky gut and autoimmune disease. SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and this is just essentially an excessive amount of bacteria in the small intestine. And it's usually an overgrowth of the various types of bacteria that really should be found in the colon, and it must be corrected. Now, SIFO is another thing that would need to be corrected, and that is small intestinal fungal overgrowth. There are tests that can be done to determine if you have SIBO. A little side note, if you're going to be tested for that, you'll want to first rule out H. pylori, which is another type of infection, as H. pylori will skew the SIBO results. So then based on the findings, you would want to talk with your healthcare practitioner then to determine the best course of treatment. Now, SIBO can be linked to many autoimmune conditions, such as celiac, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, and ankylosing spondylitis. And that's arthritis of the spine. Now, there's another factor at play here, and Crystal mentioned this, and that is vitamin D deficiency. 80%. And I've also heard up to 90% of individuals who have autoimmune disease have a vitamin D deficiency. In addition, a high percentage of people with SIBO are vitamin D deficient. The bacteria has to eat something, and it typically eats our nutrients from our food sources. Now, vitamin D deficiency has the ability to turn on autoimmune disease. Or a SIBO infection can lead to leaky gut, which then leads to autoimmune disease without vitamin D deficiency. They're all interrelated. You know, leaky gut can just be a leaky gut from genetics or some other variables such as the zonulin dysregulation that we talked about, or the result of having a whole host of gut issues taking place. There are several ways to turn on autoimmune diseases. You don't necessarily have to have all those to have a leaky gut. Unfortunately, it is not currently known which comes first. And I will say here too that 75 to 80% of those with irritable bowel syndrome have a SIBO infection. Irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, itself is a functional change in relation to motility. SIBO, on the other hand, is a physiological problem in that there is actually a bacterial infection, and both of those have similar symptoms. We talked a little bit A little bit about gluten as a disruptor of zonulin. Now, these are some other dietary culprits that can lead to a leaky gut. The cow's dairy, which is the casein, sugar, unsprouted grains, GMO foods, alcohol. And these last three, the vitamin D deficiency, low fiber diet, and high saturated fat, those will cause bacterial changes in the gut and disrupt that barrier that we talked about. Okay, and here's a nice graphic, again, from Dr. Axe. He has a lot of those. All the different body systems and disease states that are often a result of having a leaky gut. And I don't have time to cover all of these tonight. A lot of them I don't know much about, honestly, but we will look briefly at IBD down there in the bottom, inflammatory bowel disease. But first, I want to look at some statistics concerning autoimmune diseases. So the NIH, or the National Institute of Health, estimates that up to 23.5 million Americans suffer from autoimmune disease and that the prevalence is rising. The AARDA, the American Autoimmune Related Diseases Association, say that 50 million Americans suffer from autoimmune disease. Researchers have identified 80 to 100 different autoimmune diseases and suspect at least 40 additional diseases of having an autoimmune basis. An autoimmune disease is one of the top 10 leading causes of death in female children and women in all groups up to age 64. Now, the likelihood of developing an autoimmune disease after the age of 64 goes down pretty significantly. These are some autoimmune diseases that have been shown to be correlated with a leaky gut. Remember, an autoimmune disease occurs when the body attacks its own proteins. It's no longer able to distinguish between self and non-self. So we have the inflammatory bowel disease is one, celiac disease, autoimmune hepatitis, rheumatoid arthritis, and multiple sclerosis, which we'll look at a little bit when we talk about diet. Type 1 diabetes, huge correlation there. And then also lupus. Now, there are other disease states that have been associated with this gut microbiota dysbiosis, intestinal barrier dysfunction, and the microbial translocation, such as Alzheimer's disease and cancer. Neurologists now are really pushing diet in their patients because of the correlation between the gut dysbiosis and Alzheimer's. So who gets an autoimmune disease? Well, typically, it's women of childbearing age, more women than men. People with a family history are at greater risk, people who are around certain things in the environment, of course, and then some races and ethnic backgrounds are more prone to certain autoimmune diseases than others. Okay, so let's look briefly at one of the organ-specific autoimmune diseases since we are focusing on the gut, and that is inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD. Now, IBD can be either Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. And in IBD, a bacterial population, the bacterial population has clearly changed. There's a decreased diversity in that bacteria. So you have the anti-inflammatory species that are reduced and the pro-inflammatory bacteria that are increased. And you can see here in Crohn's disease, now that's going to affect all layers of the GI tract from the entrance to the exit. But primarily is in the ileum and the colon, but it can be anywhere. And then ulcerative colitis, those are ulcers along the innermost lining there, and it's only found in the colon and the rectum. And interestingly enough, vitamin D deficiency has been identified in 82% of IBD patients. So here are some symptoms and other disease associations with leaky gut. We have food sensitivities, IBS, autoimmune disease, thyroid problems, nutrient malabsorption, inflammatory skin conditions, mood issues, and autism. Again, many are interrelated and it's not always clear which comes first. So it's also possible that you could have leaky gut based upon your symptoms and not have any of these other conditions. And we'll look at ways to determine if you have a leaky gut in just a few minutes. Hippocrates is known as the father of medicine, and I really think he was onto something when he stated this: all disease begins in the gut. And like Crystal mentioned, 75 to 80% of our immune system does in fact reside in the gut. Now, clearly not all diseases are started in the gut, but we are definitely seeing and understanding more as to how many of them are. Now, I can imagine many of you who are listening, maybe you're asking yourself, well, do I have a leaky gut? And maybe you do, and maybe you don't. Consider your symptoms. Consider your current state of health and your medical history. Talk with your healthcare provider if necessary and determine the best course of action. So the various tests that are out there, I think Crystal mentioned some of these as well, are listed here. The lactulose mannitol test, that's kind of the gold standard for leaky gut. That's where you would probably start. This is a gut permeability assessment, and that's via a urine sample. So very simple is what I'm trying to say. The sample is simple. Also, serum zonulin levels can be drawn. We talked about the dysregulation of the zonulin. So if that's elevated, you're going to have some information about the permeability of that intestinal lining. So zonulin is a biomarker for that. The food sensitivity test, the IgG and IgA, and that would be a blood draw. Also stool samples, you want to rule out that infection. And there also is something called organic acid test, and this is an assessment for nutrient deficiencies. If you are found to have a leaky gut, these would be some of the dietary recommendations for helping that gut to heal and restoring your microbiota to a state of eubiosis or balance. And according to Dr. Shermer, the #1 way to heal a leaky gut is by consuming bone broth. Now, you can make your own, or you can purchase organic bone broth at a local food store or over the internet. Other items to include would be your raw or cultured dairy products, such as kefir. Now, if the dairy protein is a problem for you, you would want to consider like coconut or water-based kefir. Also fermented vegetables, coconut products, sprouted seeds like chia and flax. And of course, probiotics are very helpful, but keep in mind, you cannot expect to get rid of the gut dysbiosis by simply supplementing with probiotics and not changing your diet. People do this all the time, thinking that is enough to fix the problem. And in fact, while you can add the good live bacterial cultures to your gut and temporarily displace the bad bacteria, a permanent change cannot take place without changing your diet. It does not create a recolonization of the gut microbiota with supplements alone. All right, so we're going to shift gears here a little bit and go over the importance of vitamin D and whole food diets that have shown excellent results in terms of the gut healing itself and people bringing their gut out of that state of dysbiosis, as well as people actually reversing their autoimmune disease. Now, keep in mind, again, there are several interplays when it comes to leaky gut, nutrient deficiencies, and autoimmune disease. So it's really important that each person assess their circumstances individually, work closely with their healthcare providers, nutritionists, etc., when considering these modalities of treatment. So we've all heard the term clean eating, but this is not what it means, unfortunately. Clean eating, as most of us probably know, is choosing those foods which are non-GMO, choosing whole foods, organic when possible, and avoiding the foods that are laden with pesticides, hormones, refined sugars, as well as those that are highly processed and full of nitrates, preservatives, and other chemicals. In our typical American diet, this task can seem monumental, but for those who are seriously struggling with gut issues and autoimmune disorders, changing their diet has become paramount. It becomes a conscious choice and lifestyle change in order to feel better. vitamin D improves immunity. And unfortunately, most of us are vitamin D deficient. It's measured in nanograms per mil, and a number of 30 nanograms or higher is considered okay. Below 30 is not okay. Now, if it's below 20, this is going to impair the thyroid and the parathyroid, which then leads to bone problems. What is found now, especially for those with autoimmune disease, is that it really needs to be above 40. And while 32 is not deficient, it's neither sufficient. And there's a difference between deficiency and sufficiency. Does that make sense? And you're not going to get those numbers from your food. People think they're going to get their vitamin D, all their vitamin D from milk, when actually there's only 100 IUs per cup. What has been found is that in order to reach 40 nanograms and to hold it, people need 2,000 IUs a day. So if you're deficient, this is the number you're going to be looking at. And if you're going to try and get there with your milk, you're going to have to drink 20 cups a day. And then you're really going to have some gut issues. So honestly, the best source of vitamin D is cod liver oil. And there's 1,350 IUs per tablespoon of cod liver oil. And it does come flavored now, if anyone is interested. You could throw it in a smoothie. But I know that's, for a lot of people, that's just not well tolerated. So you could simply supplement with vitamin D. So it does improve immunity, and it can improve autoimmune disease. It's been shown to slow down demyelination in MS. Also, proper supplementing can prevent newborns at risk from developing type 1 diabetes. We know vitamin D can be obtained through sunlight. Now, in order to get vitamin D from the sun, at least 15% of your body needs to be exposed without sunscreen. If you're wearing sunscreen with an SPF of 8.5 or greater, it's going to block that vitamin D. It's not going to be able to go through the conversion that it needs to. Storage of your vitamin D and conversion of it to the hormonal form takes place in the liver, and a second conversion in the kidneys. And it needs to be activated in order to be used in its hormonal form. Also, vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so take it with some fat. Toxicity from supplementation is really rare. You'd have to consume 10,000 IUs a day or more to be toxic with vitamin D, and it's really not possible from diet alone or the sun. Now, there are other important cofactors that are needed in order to make vitamin D work at its optimum level, such as vitamin A, magnesium, vitamin K, boron, and zinc. Okay, so we're going to look at a few diet protocols. Again, tonight I don't have time to go through all of those. This was a 6-hour class where I received most of this information, and I'm trying to condense it into under an hour. So I'll encourage you to research these on your own as you see fit. All right, I talked a little earlier about inflammatory bowel disease. Diets that have shown improvement in this population are the specific carbohydrate diet, or SCD. Now, this diet restricts certain carbohydrates containing specific sugars that lend themselves to both bacterial and yeast overgrowth. There's also been good success with the FODMAPs diet. You have to keep a food diary with this one. It's a very sophisticated elimination diet where you determine what you can tolerate and what you cannot tolerate. And it's had really good results with ulcerative colitis. The Paleolithic diet, or the paleo diet, I think everyone's really familiar with that. It's a grain-free diet. And then the anti-inflammatory diet. This diet is based on the theory that the gut dysbiosis is caused by certain carbohydrates feeding the bad bacteria. So you're going to be modifying specific carbohydrates, increasing pre- and probiotic-rich foods, as well as omega-3 fatty acid food sources. And again, you're going to want to keep that food diary to know which proteins are triggering a reaction, because not everybody's going to react to the same proteins. And the goal with this diet then is to reduce that inflammation and increase nutrient absorption. Diets for multiple sclerosis. There's a lot of information out there that shows the influence of the gut microbiota on the nervous system. So we have the calorie restricted diet, modified fasting diets, Mediterranean diet, the ketogenic diet, Wall's protocol, that's a study diet that includes exercise, and a modified paleo diet in those with secondary progressive MS have actually shown a reduction in fatigue and a retarding of the demyelination process. Other diet-based interventions include increasing various vitamins and minerals, such as your vitamin E, D3, A, zinc, salts, and again, that balance of omega-3s and 6s. And this is because these nutrients are either typically low in those with MS, or the addition of them really helps to improve their outcomes. For example, increasing vitamin D3, calcium, magnesium, showed fewer relapses of MS than expected. Rheumatoid arthritis, or RA. RA is largely associated with gut dysbiosis. Again, it's that dysbiosis that causes low-grade inflammation, which then turns on disease. And Dr. Shermer has seen people in her practice turn off rheumatism by changing their diet. This is so exciting to me. One of the diets is the autoimmune diet protocol, which is basically the paleo diet. The paleo diet on steroids. It's very restrictive. Dr. Shermer's patient, one of her patients, chose this protocol and she stuck with it. She lowered all of her markers, her disease went into remission, and 3 years later, she was disease-free. She stays on the diet. She is now drug-free except for 2 milligrams of prednisone. And formerly, she was on Humira, methotrexate, and 10 milligrams of prednisone. Good results have also been seen with the modified fasting Mediterranean diet, as well as the normal caloric Mediterranean diet. This diet has also had good results, or patients with fibromyalgia have had good results with this diet as well, even though fibromyalgia is not classified as an autoimmune disease. Now, I will tell you, fatty acid supplementation is essential. The omega-3s have a very strong anti-inflammatory effect. And there are several double-blind clinical trials out there that have shown the decrease in the pro-inflammatory prostaglandins and an increase in the anti-inflammatory prostaglandins. And this was after 3 months, and they were maintained for up to 12 months. Also, with this supplementation, there were reports of decreased pain and a decrease in their medications. Okay, I do want to elaborate a minute on the ketogenic diet. This diet shows a lot of promise, and it's been used for a long time for seizure disorder in children, I believe. And its goal is to reduce inflammation and retard oxidative stress. And there is evidence that it is helping with autoimmune disease. And it's a high-fat diet, and people's concern with that, of course, is the risk of heart disease. Well, heart disease is inflammation. The blood vessels are inflamed, which is causing the plaque buildup. Remove the inflammation, and you minimize the plaque and decrease the risk. People with rheumatoid arthritis, for example, they have a 4-fold increase in the risk of heart disease. So if you take away the driver of the inflammation, which is what you're trying to do with the ketogenic diet, then you don't have the inflammation that drives the process of plaque buildup, and then you don't get it. As a matter of fact, Dr. Shermer noted that there was recently a huge study published that showed that the diet with the greatest success with reducing the most amount of disease was the ketogenic diet, which is really counterintuitive to everything that we've previously learned. And remember, with the ketogenic diet, you can choose healthy fats. Most people think high fat and they think saturated fats. But that's not the case. You can choose healthy fats. And if you want more information on this diet, there are several studies out there that have showed the effect of this diet on lowering cholesterol and reducing weight and body mass index at pubmed.gov. Okay, now I want to encourage you Whether any of these issues we covered tonight apply to you or not, really be proactive in supporting your gut health. Or as Crystal's graphic says, love your guts. You know, Dr. Shermer mentioned in her seminar, and I find this to be so true, that the focus in medicine is backwards. It's when you get sick, we'll treat you, instead of preventing the problem in the first place. And unfortunately, many people have a similar mindset, and it's largely because it's all we've known. I've been at the bedside more times than I care to count of patients who presented with stage 4 cancer because the symptoms weren't glaringly evident until that point. And here's the deal, it's not just cancer. Many chronic illnesses, especially when it stems from inflammation, start brewing long before we are aware there's a problem. And I'm convinced that we can prevent and reverse the damage to a great extent by closely listening and paying attention to our body's needs and feeding it the proper nutrition. So let's support our bodies in whatever they need in a way that is natural, safe, and effective. And in this next segment, I'm going to show you how, in addition to choosing a healthy diet, you can support your gut health and thus your immunity by using dōTERRA's supplements and essential oils. We talked about the risk of nutrient deficiencies in several circumstances and how many people are vitamin D deficient or at risk for vitamin D deficiency. We talked about the need for probiotics to help with balancing our gut microbiota and for omega-3s supporting that inflammatory response. And let me tell you, I am so thankful for dōTERRA's supplements and oils that support our gut and our overall immune function. Dr. Hill and his colleagues, they poured countless hours into researching the most effective and efficient, pure, and powerful nutrients necessary for supporting your health. And I will cover some of those products here and how they work specifically to support our gut immunity. And remember, our gut health is really a barometer of our overall health. So you see here in this slide, dōTERRA's wellness pyramid, where eating right is the foundation. Sound familiar? Now, these other steps are equally important when addressing gut health, and I'm going to pay special attention to reducing your toxic load. The bundle of supplements with the lemon oil on the right is known as the Cleanse and Restore Kit. It's designed to be a 30-day cleanse, supporting not only the gut, but also other key organ systems. Now, I know the new year is fast approaching, and it's the perfect time to consider balancing that gut microbiota. Whether you have leaky gut or not, or autoimmune challenges or not, all of us probably have some need of helping restore some balance to our gut. Now remember, changing your diet is key, and you'll get far greater results with these products if you're adopting a clean, healthy eating plan. And you don't have to do the entire cleanse to be able to use these products. Most of them can be taken on a regular basis if needed for targeted support. But an initial cleanse is a great place to start when you're wanting to help restore balance to that gut microbiota. And if you want more information how the cleanse in general works, I would suggest you get with the person who invited you to this webinar or one of the dōTERRA leaders to point you in the right direction. I know we have files and presentations available specifically for this. Okay, everybody needs a multivitamin. You have 2 whole food supplement options, the Daily Nutrient Pack and the Lifelong Vitality Pack. The Daily Nutrient Pack includes the Z Omega and the Microplex VMZ. They're designed for everyone, men, women, teenagers, pregnant and nursing women. The Z Omega contains both marine and plant omega fatty acids, contain carotenoids, vitamin D and E, along with an essential oil blend. Now there are 800 IUs of vitamin D3 here. And these are going to support cardiovascular, brain, immune, and joint health. The Z Omega is designed to be taken with the Microplex VMZ, which are your whole food vitamins and minerals. There are also 800 of IUs of vitamin D3 in this. So now you're up to 1,600 IUs of vitamin D, along with those cofactors that we talked about that are important for optimizing vitamin D's benefits. The Lifelong Vitality Pack includes the Z Omega, the Complex VMZ, and Alpha CRS. Now, these are your powerful antioxidants that help to support healthy cellular proliferation and function. And note that the Alpha CRS is for targeted benefits and support. And you will definitely want to include these if any of those aforementioned challenges apply to you. I take them because my age alone puts me at risk for cellular and immune challenges, and I want to be in that camp that is preventing issues as best I can. Enzymes. Crystal talked a lot about these enzymes. These enzymes are fantastic. I hear so many testimonies, people having such great results with help with their gut motility when they're taking these enzymes. So enzymes help to break down and metabolize the nutrients that you're taking in, such as proteins and sugars and fats. They also help to regulate thousands of other functions, including immunity, hormone regulation, cellular growth, and repair of organs, glands, and tissues. So these digestive enzymes are like little Pac-Mans, and they're not just helping to digest our food when we take them with meals, but they're also taking out the trash from all of the other nooks and crannies in our gut. So the digestive enzyme helps support healthy digestion of our enzyme deficient processed food, which hopefully we're not going to be eating much of after we listen to this. They help to promote GI comfort, and they also support healthy production of our metabolic enzymes. And you can take one with each meal, even up to 5 a day, or more if needed at a particular time if you find that you're having an acute issue. Let's see, there are benefits actually to taking them on an empty stomach, one of which would be rebuilding and supporting our connective tissue, which is throughout our entire body, supporting our structure and our organs. Right, when I think about all the things that have potential to cause a gut permeability issue, the phrase toxic load comes to mind. We went over a lot of different factors. And remember that a toxin is any substance that causes excess stress to the body. Toxic load refers to the volume of these substances that have been accumulated in the body at any given time and the overall burden it places on the body systems and our vital organs. Now, toxins come from countless sources, some of which we have mentioned, many of which we're not even aware of. Environmental threats, chemicals, and radiation are 3 of probably the most common categories. Our bodies are exposed to countless possible toxins every day, and many of the interactions really are unavoidable. But we can take steps to minimize their effect on our health. These toxins have a significant impact on our gut microbiota. So dōTERRA's GX Assist is going to be the answer to any immediate detoxification needs. There's a combination of essential oils along with caprylic acid. GX Assist helps to support natural detoxification by creating an unfriendly environment for toxins in the GI tract. Now, the essential oils in the blend help to purify and cleanse the digestive system, while the caprylic acid supports overall digestive health and microbial balance. Now, as a part of the cleanse, you can take 1 with each meal, up to 3 a day. You may want to start with just 1 a day to assess for tolerance. And then these would be taken for 10 days. PB Assist Plus is our probiotic defense formula. Fabulous probiotic. That's a combination of prebiotic fiber and 6 strains of probiotic microorganisms that encourage the growth of the healthy gut microbiota. And you can take 1 of these 3 times a day with a meal. When you're taking those in conjunction with the 30-day cleanse, these would be taken 10 days following GX Assist. Lemon and citrus oils are naturally cleansing to the body. They have really good antioxidant benefits. So you can add a drop of this or two to your water every day. This oil is a part of the 30-day cleanse. However, I use a drop in my water nearly every day. And sometimes I'll switch it up with wild orange or grapefruit. The Zendocrine detoxification complex helps to support the healthy functioning of the liver, along with the kidneys and the colon, the lungs, and the skin. Now, if you need long-term support of these organs, this can be taken daily throughout the year, but it really is an integral part of the 30-day cleanse. So it helps support the cleansing and filtering functions of those organs. With the cleanse protocol, you would take 2 of these, excuse me, 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening with your meals. Now, remember, supporting organs such as the liver and kidneys is important, especially when you consider their function in activating vitamin D to its usable form. So the Zendocrine complex is a combination of whole food extracts that give targeted support to the specific organs. You can see the list here of the different ones and which organ they support specifically. We also have the Zendocrine detoxification blend soft gels. And these are designed to support your body's natural detoxification. So it helps to cleanse the body then of harmful free radicals. This essential oil blend contains tangerine, rosemary, geranium, juniper berry, and cilantro leaf. And you can see how each of these oils specifically takes care of those liver and kidney functions, as well as the elimination process. You can take these, you can take one of these 2 to 3 times a day as needed. DDR Prime is the essential oil cellular complex. And DDR Prime promotes healthy response to free radicals while supporting healthy cellular function. This cellular complex is part of the 30-day cleanse, but it can be taken on a regular basis for cellular support. And I highly recommend it for those who may be challenged with any of the conditions we mentioned tonight. It supports healthy cellular integrity and provides important antioxidant properties. So this is the one for managing toxic oxidation. Getting tongue-tied. Okay, now the other supplement that I would recommend is the bone nutrient complex, especially if you are vitamin D deficient. This, along with the daily nutrient pack or the lifelong vitality pack, will help support healthy levels of that vitamin D and calcium. Remember, vitamin D deficiency is linked to poor immunity in general and several of those autoimmune challenges. Now, you'll receive an extra 650 IUs of D3 with this if you take the dose that is recommended, which is 4 a day. So if you're also taking the lifelong vitality pack, you could take 2 of these a day, and then you'll be getting really close to that 2,000 IUs a day. All right, here's some other products and oils I think are really helpful when we're talking about supporting a healthy gut. The DigesTen soft gels, or you could even use the oil, the DigesTen essential oil blend, for supporting a healthy gut and GI tract. These will help to ease stomach discomfort and queasiness. A lot of the leaky gut issues come with just gut discomfort in general. And these things are amazing. They're so fast acting. You can take one of these, you could rub some oil around your belly button, and in 10 minutes, you're having some pretty good relief most of the time. You could take these with tea or water to help with maintaining that healthy GI tract. Cinnamon, excellent oil for supporting the gut microbiota and establishing a balance. with that. Also, great support for healthy blood glucose levels. You can take 2 to 3 drops in a veggie cap, and this will help to really maintain a healthy immune system and support metabolic functions. Cassia is another fantastic oil for supporting a healthy immune system and for supporting the balancing of that gut microbiota. This oil does help promote healthy digestion, and you can take 1 to 2 drops again in a veggie cap internally. Also has cardiovascular benefits, and again, supporting the immune system. Benefits of myrrh. Myrrh is fantastic for balancing that gut microbiota, supporting the healthy inflammatory response, and also supporting the thyroid. You can also take this oil internally, or you can apply it topically as needed. And last, but certainly not least, is our favorite oil, very popular oil this time of year, of course, the frankincense. This is a staple, and you know, of course they say when in doubt, get the frankincense out. This has huge benefit for supporting a healthy immune system, supporting that healthy cellular function, supporting that healthy inflammatory response. We talked about all of these things tonight. This is one oil that you don't want to be without, and you can take it internally. You can apply it topically to areas of need. It's just a fantastic oil, even for mood support. So even along with some of the symptoms that you might be experiencing in relationship to some of the things we talked about tonight, frankincense is really going to be your go-to oil. All right, so that is all I have for you tonight. Wow, we are right at 10 o'clock. I hope that you found this information to be helpful for you. I encourage you to do something today that your future self will thank you for. I really like this quote, and you can apply it to any area of your life, but I think it makes a lot of sense here given what we're talking about tonight.
Thank you so much, Diane. What fantastic research and information, and what great encouragement for all of us, whether we are dealing with any digestive issues or know someone or not, just to take care of ourselves preventatively and to know this is amazing. You did an absolutely fantastic job. I really appreciate all of the work you put into this. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll wait just a minute to see if there are any questions from those who are on live. But again, thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing how this information helps so many people.
Thank you, Crystal.